Joining me from London is Ben Ward, Human Rights Watch Deputy Director for Europe and Central Asia. Ben Ward, the EU says it wants to do more on humanitarian efforts, but what exactly is it proposing and is it enough?
It's a very important effort, initiative, but it's only focused on what's happening on the Belarus side of the border. And while Belarus is very much responsible for orchestrating this crisis, our research has shown that Poland's actions are exacerbating the suffering that people are experiencing, both because of its pushbacks of migrants and asylum seekers across the border, in some cases repeatedly, and also because it's denying humanitarian access in the border area where it's declared a state of emergency. And we feel that the European Union really ought to be focusing much more on that, as well as the situation on the Belarus side.
So what exactly then do you see as the EU's role in all of this?
Well, the European Union obviously has a duty to protect its borders, and obviously has a duty to make sure at the same time that it respects the rights of people who are at those borders. And I think so far its focus has been only on the former and not sufficiently on the latter. It hasn't brought enough pressure to bear on Poland to make sure that it is complying with European Union law around access to asylum. And I think even more importantly, or more urgently perhaps, it hasn't put enough pressure on Poland to open up that secure area around the border to humanitarian organizations. And what we're seeing is lots of people trapped actually on the Polish side of the border who are in forests, living in the open, in some cases for days or even weeks, without access to food and water. And, you know, we are seeing deaths. And I think that is something that really ought not to be happening in European Union territory.
But as you say, those people are there, they're trapped in extreme conditions. Is it realistic, do you think, to expect Belarus or Poland to change their stance towards them?
Well, Belarus is obviously an extremely abusive government. It's not just abusive in the context of this particular situation, it's abusive more generally. And obviously that's the context in which this particular crisis has come about. One of the reasons the situation is so difficult in Belarus is because most civil society organizations are no longer present. They've been liquidated and their activists are no longer able to work. But the European Union does have much more ability to influence the situation on the Polish side of the border. And I think it's also right to expect a higher standard of conduct from a European Union member state that is a democracy and that has pledged to respect, you know, basic principles of human rights. And so with a proper humanitarian access and with more emphasis on making sure that people who declare an intention to seek asylum are given access to a proper process, we could see a significant shift, I think, in the situation on the Polish side of the border.